This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Care Notes with Doug Wilber. And as many of you know, Doug has been with us for a while. He has Cherished Companions, and yes, it's in Northeast Ohio. But a lot of the information that we share on this show pertains to anyone, anywhere who is looking for home care. And I have to tell you, Doug, last week we were visiting my brother in upstate New York, and his mother-in-law lost her husband about a month ago. And
Mhm.
she's staying alone in her house, which she is a hoarder, and she needs help desperately. And so I had a nice little talk with her about the fact that, you know, home care doesn't mean that somebody's going to be hovering over you 24/7. But if we can get your house organized just enough so that it's really safe for you and a caregiver, then you can sit down and discuss what are your needs? What do you need help with? She still drives, although she probably shouldn't be, but she does still drive.
Mhm.
Um, she doesn't really like to cook, but she takes care of her meals and things like that. So she doesn't need 100% care at the moment. But I told her to think about all the care she gave her husband over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think I got the light bulb to go on, and I certainly hope so because for my brother and his wife, uh, it's going to be a long road if she stays on her own.
Yeah.
So, what do you tell people when they come to you and say, mom doesn't really want anybody in the house, but we know that mom can't do everything for herself.
Yeah. I know I've said this before, but um, understand the first thing, understanding what motivates people. So a child of someone who is um, uh, older, your primary concern tends to focus around, I want to keep mom or dad safe. And so we oftentimes will approach that person with that in mind. And the you know the truth is that isn't what is motivating that individual. And that in most cases, there are some people where it does, but even then, I tend to see that as a short-term motivation, not a long-term. Um, because they may have something that scared them and they say, I need help now. But then they tend to go back to what they were feeling like before. And so I have frequently said that, the thing that's going to get you at 85 is the thing that's going to get you in trouble at 85. And that is kind of that willfulness and independence and other things, but the motivation is independence for someone who's older. They want to stay in their home. They want to be able to make decisions and other things. And so the approach that I would recommend taking to a parent, or if I were approaching someone who is older, is showing them how this actually enables them to be able to retain their independence. They're delegating some things, but that ultimately is for the purpose of independence. And so that's where I would kind of focus or recommend focusing. I do think, because if you understand that motivational difference, you'll approach it very differently. Because I can pretty much guarantee, if you say, I want you to be safe, mom, and this is all about your safety, they'll probably push back. Because I've done this for, you know, 80 years and I'm fine. And, you're not the boss of me, kind of an approach. Um, and, and that's just the reality of it. So you have to approach ultimately, you have to see what is the motivator for that person. Um, and, and then help them to see where being an aid or having an aid is going to help them, whatever that goal is. And that in some ways, that's sales 101 in the sense that, I could tell you how some product is going to help you with something, but if you don't feel like you have a need for whatever that's going to help you with, you're not going to care.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I mean,
it's
you won't be motivated to buy it. What's going to be motivate you to buy it is, that thing, that maybe that whatever it is that you're trying to promote is going to do for them, in the end.
But isn't
So
it true that a lot of home care aides, and I'm not talking about necessarily anybody who working in a facility, because in a facility, you don't have a really good chance to really mesh with those individuals. But in home care, what I have seen is that the aide becomes your friend. They're
yeah,
they're your lifeline, even if they're only coming in for a couple of hours, a week. They're the ones who tell you, hey, you look good today. Hey, can I make you a cup of tea? Something that makes you feel extra special. And now you have a new friend in your life.
yeah. No, that's we're having our Christmas party. Actually, you may hear kind of noise in the background, and that's because around me are, tons and tons of caregivers that are in the next room, um, and we host this thing every year as just a thank you, and to tell people that they're appreciated.
Sure.
Um, uh, but so we also allow, if a client wants to come and come with their caregiver, we open the doors up for that. And so I had a couple interactions today, and I'll mention both of them because I think it lends to this. The first was, one of the clients said to me, and it was a man, and we were primarily focusing on caring for his wife. And he said, your caregiver is kind of, running my household now, And but he wasn't saying it like in a negative way. It was
Right.
definitely a positive. And she's kind of taken, some of the things because of the wife, was the one who was running a lot of the
Right.
pieces, and so right now the caregiver has been able to step in and help to run some of those pieces. That's what they needed, and that's what they're granting her to do. But he basically told me, he said, she is so incredibly smart. He said she is a really smart individual, and she said, or he said, how much it has really helped that that she has been able to be in there. And when we first went in there, I think the wife was resistant to having the help, and now she's been asking for more help, and asking for more days, because she's become so much a part of the fabric of their lives, and helping them so that they can just live a normal life,
Right.
get to places where they need to go because they're not driving anymore, and all these different things that I think has made a difference to keep them independent and out and about and doing things and coming to our party, in this case. Um, so the other thing was, an aide came up to me, and she had some pictures, and she said, um, that client that you had me with a few years ago. Um, she said, the man passed away, and I knew that. She said, now every year they're inviting me over for Thanksgiving.
Oh,
So
wow.
she was showing pictures of their Thanksgiving festivities. And she said, that, they make it a point to invite her, to be a part of their family. And it's because that person is not just, it's a relationship that is really highly unusual. And in this particular case, the caregiver different in so many ways than the family, but really became a part of the family because of the care that she did for, I think, 8 or 10 months, I think is how long she was in there. But she had really become a part of the fabric so much that she is invited and she goes over every year for Thanksgiving. And she was talking about how they had a summer picnic and how she was invited to that summer picnic as well. And the wife is still alive and it's with their sons. And, it's just a really nice interaction. But what would build that type of relationship? Um, and 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 there's something that is really special about the relationship that can develop between an aide and a caregiver,
Absolutely.
or I mean, and a client, or an aide and a client's family. Um, I spend a lot of time in our orientation talking to people, and I had once was interviewing um, I was interviewing a caregiver for the position, and I said to her, I said, "This is much a profession as being a doctor or nurse." And she looked at me and she said, "No, this isn't like being a doctor or nurse." And I think ultimately I knew what she meant, which is you don't have to go through the same schooling to become a doc or a aide as you do
Right.
being a doctor or nurse. But I contend nonetheless that it is a profession, and it is a profession that is on the same order in many ways as being a doctor or nurse. And but what I looked at her and I said, look, and I've been to hundreds, literally hundreds of funerals. And I said, in all those funerals, I've only heard a doctor or nurse's name mentioned just a couple times. We and I said, but I cannot tell you the number of times that I have heard in the service the aide's name mentioned by name, or the aide being mentioned in the obituary. And you pay for every word in the
Right.
obituary. So if your name's in an obituary, it usually means something because that means someone's laying money on the table saying that I want this name here and I'm willing to pay for that. Or they've been set in the family section, or AIDS being in the receiving line. And so I looked at her and I said, so you tell me who the real professional is in this case. And I think the difference is we come in to the lives of someone at a really important juncture. There's a handful of important crossroad junctures in our lives, birth, other times. And you tend to have those things where um, it's seared into your consciousness. And the impact that you have is really profound. Um, and I think that when we're coming into people's lives, we're doing it usually at a time where there's a lot of vulnerability because someone is not doing well. They're physically maybe not doing well. They may even be, worst case scenario, um, um, passing away,
Sure.
in a hospice situation. And and in kind of swoops in the aid, to assist with certain things that are going on. And um I've long said that um loyalty is built in a time of crisis, that you you build something very suddenly and oftentimes in a very deep way when it's done right with those caregivers or with those people that you are sort of in the crisis with. To some degree, it's a little bit of a foxhole experience, you know, where you're in this together, that you're working towards helping, with an individual, and you're having a really major effect. And oftentimes it's said that very few relationships are as deep as the ones of soldiers,
Right.
in a foxhole together. And I think that um, being in a situation that an aide has, they kind of build those foxhole experiences. And when done well and when done right, you develop these relationships that are oftentimes lifelong. And at the very least, you don't forget
Right.
what that aide has done on your behalf. And one of the things, we have this Christmas party, because we want to say thank you, we appreciate, and we do all sorts of really nice things. We give people a turkey or a ham, and all sorts of things depending on what they want. And it's festive, and we try to pamper them. We have um, a um, massage therapist, who's here to
I
give
should have
them.
come there today.
Right, exactly, yeah, yeah. You should have done the interview here. But well, why do we do that? Well, we do that because we want to say thank you, because a good caregiver does acts of selflessness all the time. That this is not, for most of our caregivers, it really is not just a job. They really care about the people that they're helping and that they're trying to, make a difference in their lives. And so this is one of our ways of just saying thank you. Bless you. Truly, God bless you
But
for all that you do.
do you think you're different from many others? Because I remember when we were getting care for my mom, um, basically we were told not to get too attached to the caregivers. The caregivers were told not to get too attached to us.
Yeah,
Now, that was almost impossible because to me, they were doing the impossible, taking care of my mother and holding my hand and my brother's hand at the same time. Um, and I'm talking about the agency that was on site, the other agents
right.
we
Yeah,
won't get into. But
yeah,
I remember going to the lead nurse and saying to her, I know you told me not to get close, but it's hard not to. And what had happened was I had gone out to the deli and gotten sandwiches for my brother and myself. I had asked the caregiver what she wanted. She said she wasn't allowed to get any. And I said, this is between us. Okay. And she just totally refused. And I saw what she brought for lunch, and she didn't have much. And so I brought something back, but I stopped and said something to the head nurse, and she goes, well, that's not a good thing that you did, Karen. And I said, but she's been with my mother for 8 hours. Like,
yeah.
let her take it home. And she goes, but you're showing favoritism. And I said, no, I would do it for anybody who's with my mom. And when my mom did pass away, three of the caregivers came to the funeral.
Yeah,
One couldn't, but I've been in touch with all four of them all this time.
ever since. Yeah,
So, you know, and I've talked to other people that have had caregivers and they've said, oh no, the rules are,
yeah.
they're here just to do their job. But that's
Well,
not good
and
for the caregiver either.
yeah, here's kind of the thing is, um, we want to have, and this is what we strive for as a company, um, professional boundaries with profound relationships. Um, so you need to have the professional boundaries because people will oftentimes cross lines,
Sure.
um, and the lines can be crossed all sorts of ways, um, and and we don't want those lines to be crossed. But we also want people to get close because that's part of the joy of the job, so you can do that professionally, and things. So, but boundaries are also really important. The reason why you don't want a sandwich in your particular case to become an expectation that
Sure.
that all the meals are going to be provided for me, and then an expectation that can go further from there. But there's a way you can curtail that, so where it becomes you still maintain a professional boundary, but you still are able to develop a close relationship.
Right.
And so sometimes, and this is like true with um, bureaucracies, is true with all sorts of things. There's an old saying about the Supreme Court, that hard cases make bad precedent. There are times where really bad things happen, and so the knee-jerk reaction is we are going to pull back and not do anything,
Right.
and you pull back a mile away from where that boundary is because you're so profoundly want to not have something happen. Um, and um, and it's important that you try to prevent bad things from
Yeah.
happening, or abuses, or manipulation, or whatever that can do it. Um, but there's a way, I think, of navigating that, so that yeah, you are close. And yeah, that's always driven me crazy when someone says, "Don't get close to the person." It's like that there's something not right about that.
Exactly.
you know
Exactly.
you know yeah, yeah, I mean, on either part. I just don't. I don't buy it. I don't think that's the right approach. It's like cutting your head off to cure the headache. you
Yeah.
know yeah, there are reasons that you have to have boundaries, but gosh, you know uh, um anyway, that's to me that seems to be an overreach.
Well, I think it's counter, productive, because like we've said in the beginning, a lot of times the person who needs the care really doesn't want to accept the care. And they're going to
Mhm.
be they can be fighting it to some degree. But if this person can come in and establish a relationship, and it looks like everyone in the family is comfortable, yeah, I think it's just so much better. I mean, I could tell with my mother the way she would talk to the caregivers, which ones that she really felt close to, and which ones she wouldn't tell them anything. I mean, if they went to change her or something, she was don't even come near me. And
Yeah.
and that was, I think, one or two of them, but the rest of them, it was always, oh, darling, I'm so glad you're here today.
All right.
That made me feel comfortable that I knew that I could walk away for a while too, because she was comfortable with them there.
Yeah.
So I believe in the friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, never losing sight that you're there to serve and assist the other person. And I'll give you an example. Okay, so um, can the caregiver listen and hear the problems that person has? Yeah, they should. Should they be then spilling their own problems because they've gotten close to the individual? No, they shouldn't. That
Right.
is crossing a boundary. And I warn our caregivers not to go that place. That we're there really to help and to serve and to be there for that other individual, and that they should not be taking on our burden. That's going to undermine their
Right.
sense of care and well-being if that happens. And and but the temptation will be that you cross that boundary because you're close to this person. And again, that's why seeing this as a profession is also important. In the end, there you will keep those appropriate boundaries while still getting close and developing a relationship, and because that's in part the fun part of the job for those who are true caregivers, that they love the fact that they're close to someone and they're helping and making a difference.
And getting
y-
close to the family too is almost like a reference for your future too. Because
yeah.
I know when after my mother passed away, um, one of the caregivers who we totally adored, um, at that point, she didn't have anything lined up. And I went to the director of nursing. And I mean, I just said every positive thing I could about her. But in the meantime, when I was walking through the facility, I did hear of another family who was looking for a good caregiver. And I put it all together for them and I said, go talk to the head nurse. Here's somebody who I think would really be good. I can't guarantee you're going to get her. And they ended up getting her, and she was with
Wow.
them for 3.5 years. Uh,
Wow. Yeah.
so, to me, that meant a lot because I knew how good she was, but I also knew after the fact some of the things that she had gone through, which we had no concept of. And
Hmm.
afterwards, when she called to thank me for everything, she shared it with me at that point and was like, I was so glad I did help her out. But I
Yeah.
was also so glad that she hadn't told me that because they were hard things to hear.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, in the end, I do want to maybe leave people with a couple thoughts. One is the profound effect that a caregiver can have on a family's life, and what a blessing and stuff. And we've talked about that many, many times with what we're doing. The second thing would be, I think, a part of the ways that you can help maintain those professional boundaries is by having a company where there's supervision. So you can allow it so that people can get close, but there is some oversight and some ability to keep it from going off the rails
Sure.
in those circumstances. And then the third thing, which is, we're in a season of kind of the Thanksgiving season, the Christmas and Hanukkah holidays, and I do think it's an important time to think about, at least now. And I know people are going to listen to this even when it's not this season. But I do think it brings at least to mind for me, because the holiday party is how important it is to thank the caregivers in your life for all that they are doing. Those caregivers may be professional caregivers like what we have, or it may be someone in the family, a daughter that is of a person, or someone's sister that has really stood in the place and is helping, or one of the parents, of husband taking care of his
Sure.
wife, or vice versa, where they're taking on a lot for that other person. And just to really tell that individual how much they are appreciated for what they're doing. Um, those acts, like inviting someone for the Thanksgiving meal in this particular situation, like I mentioned before, you know, made that person realize that they were seen for what they did and the impact that they had. And what a blessing that has been to her, that there's she has kind of an adopted family, at least, adopted deep
Sure.
friendship that developed out of that, and that kind of ongoing relationship, is a big thank you. It's thank you for having this impact in my life, and I think we all need that. We all need that thing in where we are appreciated for the things that we've done. And caregivers really give a lot. They open their heart every day. They open their heart in a way that is really hard because they know at some point in time that their heart is going to be broken,
Right.
um, because the person they're caring for is usually older and is likely that that person's going to pass away, at some point in time. And you're going to have the pain of losing someone that you've become close to. And, and that takes a really special person. So, for the caregivers in your life, um, you know, do say thank you. You know, do say how much you appreciate what they do, throughout the whole process. And I will tell you that will cause that person to light up like a light bulb in many cases.
Absolutely.
So, and most often what you'll hear from them is, well, it's such a blessing for me to get to know your parents
Right.
or your
Exactly.
mom or whatever, because they really mean it. That really is. But boy, it really makes a big difference in their lives to say thank you. So, some thoughts. I hope that you stay warm. So,
Well, I hope everybody stays warm and has a good holiday season. And remember the one word that Doug used, and it's called appreciation. And we need to appreciate the people around us who are helping us out, whether they're family or paid caregivers or the volunteers in our community. So thank you and happy holiday. We'll talk to you soon.
take care. Bye bye.